Okay guys, so in this presentation we're going to go over what the science says about the Nordic hamstring exercise and why it is so effective at reducing hamstring injury risk. So before we get into the Nordic hamstring exercise, we need to understand a little bit about hamstring injuries to begin with. So hamstring injuries generally occur during high speed running, during this late sort of swing phase where this this lower leg, is swinging forward. And when we get to this point where the hamstrings are at maximum stretch, we see the highest amount of stress on the hamstrings, probably because it's undergoing very high stretching at very high speeds, which is probably why we see this high amount of stress during this late swing phase. So in this study from 2005, they managed to capture someone undergoing a hamstring strain injury on a treadmill in their lab doing another study. So this is just one case, but basically they found that the hamstring injury was again in that late swing phase of the gait cycle. So the question is, why does it happen at this point? And there's proposed reasons that it's the high eccentric loading of the hamstrings at that point, because as the if we go back to this slide, as this leg's going forward, the hamstrings are actually lengthening and having to eccentrically contract in order to sort of slow down this leg coming forward, because it's about to go from swinging forward to attacking and swinging back. So from this study from Opar and colleagues 2015, they looked at eccentric hamstring strength of Australian football players, and they did this prospectively. So they looked at these strength measures before the players actually got injured. So they took a bunch of AFL players and they looked at their eccentric hamstring strength, and they then let them play the season, and then they came back and sort of analyzed who got injured and compared that with who didn't get injured. So and we got at 3 points here at the start of the season, at the start of the preseason, the end of the preseason, and the in-season. And basically the players that got injured at all points had lower eccentric hamstring strength, sort of indicating that it's probably a risk factor for future hamstring injury risk. So another study from Timmins and colleagues 2016, they pretty much did the same thing, but what they did was they measured biceps femoris fascicle length. So one of the hamstring muscles, probably the most commonly that gets injured, they measured the length of the fascicles of the muscle. And they looked at that again prospectively, so they looked at it before the players actually got injured. So again, the fascicle length in the players that got injured was much lower, both at rest and during some tension. That's indicating again that this is that short fascicle lengths are potentially an injury risk factor for hamstring injury. So if we look at this study, this is a systematic review and meta-analysis, and they basically took all the studies that used Nordic hamstring exercises as an injury prevention exercise, and they found that the Nordic hamstring exercise, the soccer players that included that in their programs had a 51% lower chance of attaining a hamstring injury. So these are huge numbers. If we can reduce hamstring injury risk by 51%, that is quite a substantial margin by which one exercise is doing. So the question is, why are Nordic hamstring exercises the ones that can do this? So as we mentioned, eccentric strength appears to be a risk factor, as does low short fascicle length. And also, there's some evidence to suggest that higher pronation angle is going to be another injury risk factor. So in this study, they basically got some guys to do Nordic hamstring exercises and a control group that did nothing for 4 weeks. And in just those 4 weeks, we saw greater, significantly more eccentric strength, lower pronation angle, and increased fascicle length. So why? So these are many hamstring injury risk factors, and we can get a lot of this benefit from simply doing one exercise. So it's probably due to the fact that the Nordic hamstring exercise allows supramaximal eccentric training, which means that we can use the eccentric portion maximally, and we don't have to actually worry about the concentric portion of the lift. We can just shuffle ourselves back and do it all again, which is quite unique in exercises. If we think about other hamstring exercises, such as like a Romanian deadlift, where we lower the weight down, in order to do another rep, we actually have to bring the weight back up. So we can't just load most exercises for only the eccentric. So that's probably why the Nordic hamstring exercise is such an effective exercise at reducing hamstring injury risk. And that's it for this presentation. If you want, check out Movement and Performance on Facebook and Instagram to see more of those infographics like I had in the last slide. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the YouTube channel and comment on any particular topics that you want to be covered. Thanks for watching, and hopefully you got something out of it.